others, but I'm drooping, can't stay still. I'm weak as some progress, can't escape from myself. Break all the mirrors, don't be afraid of bad luck, 'cause it's the only kind we have here. Break all the mirrors, don't be afraid of bad news, 'cause it's the only kind we have here. It's easy to pass judgment when you're first starting to live all on your own. No, you're not alone, you're just not leaning on the wall. I am a skunk repelling everything I find, searching, not finding any shred of peace of mind. Is it courage to boldly admit to all I lack? Imagine phantom father is never coming back.
Hello again, and I am Dan Wu. This is Unquestionable here on KZSC, reminding you that as a non-commercial educational radio station, KZSC supports free expression of ideas. Please be aware that the opinions expressed are those of the speakers or artists only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the UC Regents, KZSC staff, management, or underwriters. We welcome your feedback on our programming. Please direct your comments to the Program Review Committee at 831-459-4726 or by email at prc@kzsc.org. And in the background, we got my other theme music, Mirrors by the local group Homebrew from their Acoustic on K-Pig album. I guess it's part of the name of the album, so I can say that. But I sometimes don't have a plan, as the song in the background is saying. And sometimes, as the song also said, I feel like a skunk repelling everything that comes in my way. But I want to say hello officially and welcome to Unquestionable with myself, Dan Wu. As I said, on this final October weekend of the 2018 election cycle, we have a lot to get through today, but that doesn't mean I want a quiet interaction with the audience. You can subsidize the word count on this socialist-leaning, or socialite, as we prefer to be called, program by calling in at 831-459-4036 or by texting into that same line. I want to start by saying that I cannot imagine what the families and acquaintances of those killed in Pittsburgh are feeling. And I know we're in California and this is a local issues show, but I have to mention it. I send my deepest condolences, whatever that means. I'm a very agnostic person, I'll admit, so I'm not sure how to phrase those things sometimes, and I don't want to pin it down. But I hope this day will help us, get to the point where we can kind of finally address or even publicly identify the cause of this epidemic. And also, as yesterday showed, why so many of these issues and instances target very specific populations. I don't want to get too into that one. I watched the Democracy Now! Interview with Stephen Miller's uncle. Stephen Miller, an advisor to Donald Trump. I highly recommend that interview of Stephen Miller's uncle on Democracy Now! It's pretty amazing. And, yeah. But on today's show, we will be talking more about local issues, and you can call in 459-4036 in the 831 area code or text in that number. As I promised a caller last week, this episode will include a segment about Monterey County's big battle of the season over Measure J, a water company initiative down there. And to my journalism mentor, yes, that is Ducky, Allison Ducky Moppin singing in the background there. She is the singer of Homebrew, and that's a song she wrote with her co-conspirator, who I'm blanking on the name of, but that's their acoustic two-person version of Homebrew, which also has like a 6-person, sometimes including burlesque dancer, like 70s rock, power rock craziness ensemble that they sometimes show up with. And it's funny that Mr. Brad Kava, my journalism mentor, just texted me because I'm trying to serve an area down further where he lives. He doesn't live that far down, but I feel like we often do a disservice to Monterey and San Benito counties because our signal does reach far down there. I heard it south of King City the other day driving back from LA, and we cover a lot of Santa Cruz issues, a lot of Santa Cruz centric topics, and Monterey has this huge battle going on around Measure J, their water company initiative. And I invite everyone, again, 831-459-4036, to call in with ballot measures or candidates you feel need attention. If I mention it, call in. If I don't mention it, call in. And let me know of what you think, whether or not it just needs attention and you just want to mention it, whether you got a strong opinion on it. Just keep the language afternoon approved by our current society. We got a call coming in. I'm going to take that in a minute. I got a little bit of stuff to get through first, but thank you so much for the call. Just give me a couple minutes, because I just want to say also you can text in at that number, but please use whole sentences or entire words. I will not read SMS riddled riddles, as it'll just belittle the pivotal, beneficial, subliminal, liminal, and superliminal attributes of your contribution to this conversation. But now, back to Square 2018. I got a question for you. Do you think before the invention of God, people blew kisses to the sky after hitting home runs? Maybe I'll let this person answer that question. You're on the air with KZSE Santa Cruz because you stayed on there and you won't go away. What's going on?
I'm not sure the answer to that question.
All right.
I really appreciate the support of Monterey. You know, I know a lot of people down here really enjoy the radio station, and we get a perfect signal down here. So
It's very true. I think I recognize your voice. You're the caller that called in and wanted me to talk about Measure J, correct?
That's correct. I'm real passionate about it. I'm not exactly involved with it. I mean, I've helped out, put signs up, talked to people, but it's a real incredible battle from my perspective to watch a company kind of just come after the public, just concerned citizens, and just throw this much money and basically take public water now to court over like not having tiny little stickers on their signs that say public water now, yes for Jay.
Yeah, I will get
when
I
the
will,
sign says that on the sign. You know, it's just kind of
right.
just a lot of little stuff.
And so you sound like you're a supporter of Measure J. Help me out. I've been doing research on this all week sporadically when I've been able to. And help me out by giving your 3-sentence interpretation of what Measure J, 1 sentence on what it is, 1 sentence on why it exists, and why you're for it.
Okay. What it is the public, basically Monterey, we want to buy the water system from Cal-Am. And it's kind of a weird thing because it's not, theirs. We've paid for it and this and that, and they run it. And so our bills have skyrocketed in the last 20 years. And, I mean, I'm talking, 170%, and our neighbors in Marina are paying, half that. And so it's a lot of there's been a lot of mismanagement. I can't get into it, but
so they're under the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District in Marina, you're saying?
Not
the
exactly.
Public
You're
utility.
a little mixed there.
Thank
there's
you.
Marina Water
I've been
District,
trying to sort
and
this
there's
out.
Monterey Peninsula Water District.
Absolutely.
And so Monterey Peninsula Water District basically has been assisting Cal-Am for the last 25 years. They were formed to kind of assist Cal-Am come up with new water sources and help run the system. I believe. I'm not sure if I'm exactly right on this, but I'm pretty close. And so we basically want to, acquire the system from Cal-Am and have Monterey Peninsula Water District run it.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna get into a little bit of other stuff as well. And thank you for the call. I'll allow an exception to our double dipping rule. If you feel like you want to call in later, go ahead. We try to get 1 call per person. But thank you for starting us off there. And I've been trying to sort out the maps. I was trying to look for jurisdiction maps and see where the lines were. And you're right, it's some overlap of like one person managing it and one group owning the infrastructure is what I'm understanding a lot of the time.
And, Cal-Am doesn't want to give it up. We're their cash cow. And, they're trying to build this desal plant to, like, kind of trap us into, having them be our water service. And so there's a lot of, like, really weird stuff going on, but it's a battle with a corporate giant. And it's like, trying to kill a monster, like in the movies. It's like at the end, it just gets crazy. And right now they're like, "Rawr!" So it's kind of a really intense battle down here. But thanks for your time.
Hey, thank you very much. And I just want to say it's not a knock on that caller. I really appreciate that. But I feel like the people fighting against Measure J would describe it the same exact way, that they're trying to kill a monster of the groups that are trying to come in and buy the water system infrastructure from Cal-Am Water. And it's a really interesting story that I have been trying. I'm a Santa Cruz resident all my life. We have water issues up here. Seems like a different mix of issues down in Monterey area. So I'm going to start off with the basics so I don't get in over my head and so that listeners can get a little taste of it. 831-459-4036 if you'd like to call in and add to the conversation. According to Ballotpedia, a yes vote on Measure J in Monterey County is a vote in favor of directing the district, the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, to create a plan for acquiring all assets of the water system from California American Water through negotiation or eminent domain. Now, a no vote is a vote against directing the district to create such a plan to acquire all assets from Cal-Am Water, thereby allowing Cal-Am Water to continue as the owner and manager of the Monterey Peninsula water system. A lot of the same arguments get thrown out for public utilities of other sorts like electric and gas, healthcare, dare I say rent control. To say that water is a public resource and should not be controlled by private hands, to point out massive increases in price over what the public views as very squeezed timetables. And, of course, the no campaign says it will cost too much money. Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association, Monterey County Business Council, both oppose it. And they say that they are liberal Democrats and anti-tax conservatives who are united in opposing Measure J. They say stop the costly water boondoggle, vote no on Measure J. They point out actually a water takeover that happened in Felton years ago, and they say that bills have gone up in that area and that it cost about, by their figure, close to 7 times as much as it was sold to the residents of Felton to take over that. And I believe they're talking about Lompico Water District. I want to hear from the callers out there as well. 831-459-4036. Help me out on this Monterey County Measure J. I will give as much info as I can on it. And one of the things that I found interesting is this headline: Judge overturns language of public water initiative on Measure J. And like the caller said, there was a court case where the opponents of Measure J got upset that the wording on the signs that people were putting up in their yards and in windows and open pieces of land that they owned or public land were not fully illustrating who was paying for the campaign. And even they took it to court and got them to change the wording on the ballot. So it was originally called the Monterey Peninsula Water System Local Ownership and Cost Saving Initiative. And it is now called the Monterey Peninsula Water System Local Ownership Feasibility Study Initiative. That is because this whole process will start with a feasibility study of buying the utility from Cal-Am Water in the first place. Obviously, people have been looking into this for years. And as the caller said, they've had a public water option for over 20 years. So this is not a new thing, but prices are constantly changing. Costs are constantly changing. Those things will need to be assessed by the Monterey Peninsula water system before they go forward with any sort of takeover. Another piece to this puzzle is that with the risk of this all coming down on Cal-Am's list of things to do, they went out and got appraised on their own. Their appraisal of their company came out at $1.044 billion. That is $1,044 million for Cal-Am to sell their assets to Monterey County. And this came out in July, I believe, September. So September, which is even better than July for Cal-Am Water, it seems, in my opinion, of political ploys or political tactics. Ploy, if you don't agree with them, tactics. I actually don't have a solid opinion. This is a very much more objective journalism type of show for me. I'm just trying to update you guys on the happenings with the Measure J Monterey County Water Initiative for anyone in that area who's undecided or someone who has a very strong opinion and wants to call in and tell me it. But this $1.044 billion assessment contrasts with assessments that I've seen in analysis of the bill, even by the No on J campaign, that say it will cost, I believe it was $300 to $700 million, $700 million or more to buy Cal-Am's property in the years when it will be possible after all the feasibility studies. Cal-Am came out with this assessment of their own assets to say that's another $300 million they'd like. Obviously, that assessment will be used as a negotiating tool if Measure J passes to say that they have an assessment saying they're worth $1.044 billion. Therefore, Monterey County residents will have to pay that amount to obtain the infrastructure. However, that will go into negotiations. We got a call coming in here. That's cool. And I just want to say that it also can scare people away from voting for Measure J because they're going to see $1 billion price tag as a possible repercussion. You're on the air with KZSE Santa Cruz. Unquestionable, please turn off your radio if it's on.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's the same caller again. I'm just really passionate about this, and I have some answers for you.
All right, go ahead.
You'd be interested. Cal-Am came up with the $1 billion number, and you're pointing out, they're trying to scare everyone, and that's actually true because they told Felton that they were going to be $64 million, and tried to scare everybody with this huge number. I mean, it's a tiny little community, and they're like $64 million, but they ended up settling for 12, I believe, and so it's kind of a tactic that Cal-Am has to try to scare people away from voting yes and just see what they're worth. And, and basically the courts will decide what they're worth from what I understand. So, they could say they're worth $5 billion. I could have, another silly thing about that number is that they're already putting their $300 million on top of that to make the $1 billion with a desal plant that's not even built yet. So, and it doesn't even look like it's going to be built because they're getting sued by Marina.
That makes a lot of sense. That's where that extra $300 million, or at least part of the extra $300 million comes in, because the No on J campaign actually is not even willing to put that in their official argument against the plant or against the buyout, where they actually are saying $700 million. That makes sense because they probably don't want to be called out for it being deceptive if they say the $1 billion number, although they have Cal-Am saying it for them on the side, is kind of what you're saying.
Basically, every flyer that I've got in the mail from Cal-Am has been super deceptive.
Who's
I
paying
mean, that's
for
their
it?
whole
Do you remember?
plan to win is like to be deceptive. But the answer is yes. That's a deceptive number because the $300 million doesn't exist yet. We haven't been billed for the desal plant yet. They haven't built it. They haven't even got the plan. I mean, they got the plans approved, but they're already getting sued for it. And the word on the street is that they're not going to be able to even start for years.
Well,
So,
also,
I
wonder.
just got a glossy. I got a big glossy brochure for them saying, "Oh yeah, the desal plant's going great." So it's just all BS.
Do you recall who is credited with paying for the mailers you're getting at the bottom? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, they're paying for it. It says paid for by Cal-Am.
Okay.
And, if you talk to their attorney or anybody, they're like, oh, well, Cal-Am's paying for it. Y'all, Monterey isn't paying for it, but they're here and it's for us and it's against us. So it's basically our money. I mean, how could you not think it's our money? They're here to, to influence us on our money.
And also, it's interesting because when Cal-Am is paying for it, it's much like the Measure M campaign up here. They say that mom and pop landlords are paying for it, but really who's paying for the Cal-Am campaign is Cal-Am bill players because they pay the money to Cal-Am and then Cal-Am's using that to campaign for their interests.
Yeah, I did the math. If they spend $5 million, which looks likely, they spent $2 million in just like a few months, and I don't know who knows what they're going to spend up until now. But if they spend $5 million, we have 40,000 ratepayers. You're looking at 125 each person or each ratepayer for a year. So that's a lot of money on each one of us. That I wish we just had a little lower rates, and we wouldn't even be on the table.
All right. Thank you so much for the call. And 831-459-4036 to be on Unquestionable with KZSE Santa Cruz. I'm Dan Wu. We're about halfway through the show. We got another caller coming in here. Maybe it's a different person. Let's see. What's up, man? Or person. Sorry.
Hi, Dan. This is Bob.
Hello, Bob.
I called to add a couple of more pieces of the puzzle.
Are you driving right now?
Yes.
Can you roll up your window? And you're on hands-free, correct?
Yeah, I'm on hands-free. The window's rolled up.
Oh, okay.
If
Never mind
the
then.
quality's not good enough, you can just let me go.
No, you're good.
You
Go
want
ahead.
it?
Go ahead.
Okay, very good. So, first piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, we got to drop you, Bob. But if you get to a better reception location, we will take your call. And I do appreciate you listening. 831-459-4036 to call in. And you know what? I have not been on our wonderful text system here at the moment. So I will get that going. I'm on several computer screens trying to do too many things. But okay, I got that going now. So you can also text in if you're in a bad location and you're driving and you really, really want to get your words in here. You can pull over, park your car, and text me if you would like at 831-459-4036. Back to their efforts to, let's see if we got Bob again. Hello, you're on KZSE Santa Cruz.
Hey, Dan, it's Bob again. I'm out of the valley that cut the signal off. Do I sound any better now?
You sound amazing. What can we do for you?
Okay, fantastic. So, first piece of the puzzle I wanted to talk about is to what extent does Cal-Am own the water system today? And the situation is that the Public Utility Commission defines all money retained as earnings by every private water company in the state as its money to do what it pleases with. And that's in, I'll call it juxtaposition to the rule that they use for contributions in aid of construction, which are always collected if you're not a water customer and you want the water system extended to your property. It might be a developer developing 10 acres. or it might be somebody who has a well now and wants to hook up to water. They have to pay the full cost of construction.
Okay, so hey,
before they can get turned
Bob,
on, and then they get
Bob.
to pay the tariff rates.
Okay, Bob.
So,
Yo, Bob. Bob.
If it's,
I don't know if Bob can hear me. I got to cut you off. If you can't stop talking when I ask a question, I can't have a conversation with you. That was going a little bit long, and the sound quality was a little bad, but that's okay. It's nothing against Bob. It's just his circumstances right now. But that's all right. And we do have some other listeners, I believe, texting and messaging me about other issues. If you'd like to call in and make me pivot to another issue, I'm totally welcome to do that because there's only 2 weeks left. We're on next Monday, the day before the election. A lot of people have voted. We have a very, dare I say, large upper middle class and upper class white population in Santa Cruz and Monterey County, and those people tend to vote early. So if you want to reach them with your point of view, you may have already missed them. I talked with my grandma this morning at her house. I stopped by and said hi. I talked with her about a couple things and was like, oh no, you did what? Oh God. And she had already voted. So, you know, that's okay. She voted for Justin Cummings, but she didn't know who Drew Glover was. So that was interesting on my personal opinion spectrum. If you don't know who Justin Cummings or Drew Glover are, they are the two candidates for city council modeling themselves most after tenants' rights in Santa Cruz City council race. And there's about 11 candidates in that race. As I said last week, since I'm mentioning those candidates, other candidates are welcome to hit me up at Daniel Wootan on Facebook. That's WOOTAN. And also dan.whoop@gmail.com. If you would like to come on next week, you can. But like I said, a lot of people have voted in Santa Cruz already. I've talked about Measure M, which I do want to talk about more. You know, that conversation is going to go on beyond November no matter what happens. But I did want to put some effort into the Monterey Big Battleground. One of the things that's very interesting is that they've had to change signs and the title on the ballot of their measure. Then Cal-Am went out and appraised themselves at $1 billion to either scare voters away from wanting the buyout or as a bargaining chip when they go into negotiations if Measure J passes. Just as is in Santa Cruz, Monterey County, especially western Monterey County, has undergone a transformation of cost increases just for the cost of living over the last 20 years or so. I don't mean that as a necessarily bad thing. A lot of money has come into the area. I'm not anti-money, but there's a lot of people trying to cope with it. Water bills are one of those things. Rent, housing prices, all of those things are putting the squeeze on people, and they're feeling like Measure J and buying out the water system from Cal-Am, a private organization, would benefit them in the long term. There are a lot of groups, a lot of former and current elected officials that don't feel that way. Former Mayor of Carmel by the Sea, Sue McLeod, the Monterey County Business Council co-founder, Mary Ann LaFell, and the Carmel River Steelhead Association chair, conservation chair, all oppose Cal-Am being taken over through Measure J. So there's a lot of big names in that community going up against this idea. Interesting, Dennis Marr is the president of the League of Women's Voters in Monterey County. Mayor of Monterey, Clyde Robertson, and former Monterey County Supervisor Karen Strasser-Kaufman, as well as the Seaside City Council, has representatives fighting for this Measure J buyout of Cal-Am. And we will be back in just a moment. I'm going to take a breath, regroup, come back and talk about a different issue, a little more broad perspective on politics as they are right now. I want to get this little editorial in, kind of see how I see the things a little more long term, because after next week, all these issues we're arguing about are just going to start new arguments, and it never ends. And I'm not saying elections should go forever, but I am saying that we should continue to be engaged in our politics even after we go and vote, because We can't just leave it up to our elected officials to take the ball and run with it after we elect them. As what comedian said with Barack Obama, we elected him and we said, you got this, right? And we just bailed on him, and he didn't get a lot of stuff done that we wanted to get done. So maybe we need to keep working and talking about these things forever and ever and ever and ever. We'll be back in about 30 seconds with more. I'm going to talk about what I see going on with the party that I'm sometimes jump to as a lifeboat, the Democratic Party, when I come back. And if you have candidates or issues you want to mention for the upcoming election next Tuesday, you can call in 831-459-4036. Calling out Brad Kava if you want to call in. Always welcome on my show, even though some don't want you on the air. There's one thing that's for sure. No matter what happens in California's elections this year at the state and local level, I'm sure that Donald Trump and other Republicans will claim the result as a victory, even if the likely election of pro-business Democrat Gavin Newsom comes to fruition and he becomes our governor. The claims will, of course, resemble the gloating that Democrats dished at Republicans during their 17-person clown car primary battle royale in 2015 and 16. The Republican Party at that time was going through a lively soul-searching adventure, and this was after John McCain earned the nomination at like the unluckiest time ever, probably since Gerald Ford, who had to follow Nixon. John McCain had to follow the Republican accelerated economic collapse. I'm not saying they're to blame for the entire thing. There's a lot of people that did stupid things, but they definitely didn't help it any. And, you know, the Iraq War was something that people still cared about ending. Seems to be fine now. We're just going to go with that forever. And then, of course, Mitt Romney in 2012, he was their centrist, safe candidate, and no one really liked it. And then Donald Trump tapped into the people left out of that debate and somehow kept those tribal Republicans that will always vote for the party no matter what in the party enough to get enough electoral votes to beat Hillary Clinton. And so what I see going on right now is, I mean, we'll see how long those centrist Republicans stay with them through events like the mailing of bombs this last few weeks, the shooting in Pittsburgh yesterday, the Charlottesville murder by car incident, and all of those things. Right now, regardless of anything the Republican Party says that incites any horrible thing or just things that they vote for that I think are awful most of the time, the Democratic Party is nowhere at the end of their soul searching. The Republican Party is going to say that it's a victory for them when they see us fighting over issues like rent control and Proposition 10. And if you're not familiar with these things, look them up. I will do my best in 15 minutes to get to some of them. But Measure M, Prop 10, Proposition 6, which is opposed by the Democratic Party, but a lot of Democrats are tired of paying certain fees on their cars and certain fees on their gas, and they might vote for Prop 6, which will just hurt the roads and save them a little money on gas, but then they have to buy more tires and suspension, and that people don't think about these things. We're human. Come on now. There's a lot of people saying we shouldn't be fighting with each other. The Republicans are going to claim victory because they're going to say we're divided. And I would say I don't care if our team is looking like they're fighting with each other, because I'm so far over the whole thing of, I have nothing against Hillary Clinton. I'm not saying she's like I'm so tired of those conservative review TV commercials that say that all these horrible things about her. I just think that she's not a very good candidate, and I don't think she inspires enthusiasm, and I don't think Gavin Newsom inspires enthusiasm. I think that we need to really look at fighting with each other publicly, like we're doing in Santa Cruz with Measure M. We're debating very strongly, and people are not enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a ton because of the fact that we're finally not pretending to agree on everything. Yes, racism is bad. Yes, women's rights are great. Yes, we should bring in refugees. Yes, I think we shouldn't dump pollution openly into the water as much as we can avoid it. That doesn't mean that we can't argue with each other. And when the other team says, oh my God, look at they're fighting with each other, I don't care, because I feel like we're not fighting within one team. I feel like we're trying to recruit a new team. We're trying to get voters, in my mind, people that agree with me, we're trying to get voters to come off the sidelines, start voting, start going to demonstrations. I have a radio show. I work. I don't get to a lot of demonstrations. I am down with the cause of really, really being okay with publicly arguing and debating about issues that really, really need to be debated. I have to touch on the new developments in the Measure M debate going on right now in Santa Cruz, because I went to the No Place Like Home affordable housing study session at the Civic Auditorium last week, and I was not aware of some things that were going on there. There was a really racist, horrible flyer being circulated at that event, basically saying that if you pass rent control, somehow MS-13 is going to get to move in next door to you. And then when they got called out for being racist because it was a bunch of like really, really stereotyped Mexican gang members or wherever the flyer producer wants to say they came from. He's a very well-known slumlord in Santa Cruz if you look online. I won't name that person. There's a lot of talk about his endorsement being rejected by the No on Measure M people, whether they're going to give back their money to him. Then after being called out for being racist, he changed it to be, oh, if rent control passes, the Aryan Brotherhood's going to move in next door to you. I'm sorry, you don't get to do that. And I showed it to one person that thought Measure M was a flawed initiative. And I said, have you read it? He's like, no, but there's a lot of flaws. I'm like, well, you're just hearing that from people, right? And he's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And then I showed him that flyer. He was instantly for Measure M. He was instantly for rent control based on the people that he sees opposing it. And the people opposing Prop 10, which isn't even rent control, it allows the conversation on rent control to even be had at any local level. Right now, there's a lot of forms of rent control and types of houses it can be imposed on that are banned by a 1995 act called the Costa-Hawkins Act that passed by one vote and is now seen as sacred law by most property owners and large banks. But it's not. It passed by one vote in the California Assembly and Senate. So it probably can be looked at again, and Prop 10 would repeal it and allow for future conversations on rent control to go forward. And I'm down with that. The Democratic Party is endorsing Prop 10 to allow conversations about rent control. However, they're opposing the Measure M in Santa Cruz, but then there's a huge following of people supporting Measure M that probably voted for Hillary Clinton. And Dianne Feinstein won the primary by a huge margin against Kevin De Leon, and then 2 months later, the Democratic Party of California endorses Kevin De Leon. Gavin Newsom's going to probably become our governor because why not? But I'm sure that there's going to be a discussion about that later on and about how he kind of represents the establishment that hasn't really done much for the average person. These are just some examples of the splits within the Democratic Party that I see that I think are very productive, and other people will look and laugh and say, look, they're fighting with each other and they're not going to be able to get any victories put together through this. And I say that's better than lining up against us with the other party that's kind of just having to hold their breath and be like, oh God, what's our leader going to do next? What's Donald Trump going to do next? That destroys any local candidate's chances of ever putting Republican next to their name. 831-459-4036. If you have any objections or agreement with anything that I just said, there's a lot that's on my mind. I've been thinking a lot. I'm so far down the rabbit hole, but I'm really stoked to see these fights going on within the Democratic Party. Dianne Feinstein has been a senator since I was in second grade. And the Democratic Party just gave their endorsement to her opponent, Kevin De Leon. They support rent control conversations, but then the Democratic Party doesn't support rent control. It's kind of like the people like my friend that say, oh, Measure M is flawed. But then when I ask them if they've read it, they say, no, I just heard it was flawed. And of course, nothing's perfect. That's why we're engaging in an election every couple years. Nothing is perfect. Nothing will be perfect. My idea of every dystopia is someone's utopia. I believe in a world where everyone is a little bit bummed all the time, because that means we're compromising with each other a little bit. That means that one party's not getting everything they want, and that means the debate goes on. Right now, there's some really fun debates, and I want to also just cover this Prop 10 thing. Prop 10 would overthrow, repeal, whatever your favorite language is, of the Costa-Hawkins Act, which is a 1995 bill which drastically shuts down the conversation on any sort of rent control or tenants' rights in California. If anyone remembers, in 2008, a lot of people started losing their homes. Between 2006 and 2010, a lot of people lost their homes. And a lot of that happened in California, Florida, a couple other places where there were nice, expensive homes. And some people were stupid and got into mortgages they couldn't afford, except for when things were going great. And a lot of people got tricked by banks who said, oh, don't worry, you get this adjustable rate and it'll work out fine for you. And they got tricked, and I feel bad for those people. Then the banks came in and swooped up all those houses, and lo and behold, a lot of people needed to rent homes. So the banks didn't sell those homes. They've just been renting them out since then and jacking up rents. And there's this group called Blackstone Equity, the biggest equity firm in the world, that owns 127,000 homes in California. They own about 1,200 homes in San Diego. I was reading an article, slews of apartments and all kinds of things. And they are leading the charge against Prop 10 because they are terrified of a debate happening on rent control. And it's kind of like a bully punching you and then saying to the principal, yo, we don't need to talk about who's to blame here. Let's just move on. Let's just, come on now. It's just fun on the playground. You really need to look at this from another perspective, is that Blackstone is working on a $40 billion project. They got some help. You'll see that the largest opponent of Prop 10, Blackstone Equity, is in bed financially with Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. The fame from the alleged murder and conspiracy talk that's going on around his involvement in the killing of a journalist, which is also, in effect, attempted murder on the First Amendment, as far as the fact that that journalist was based in the U.S. And we're talking like heavy involvement, $20 billion from the Prince of Saudi Arabia going into the same group that's fighting rent control, conversations from even beginning in California. Prop 10 does not impose rent control. Prop 10 just allows us to have a reasonable political debate with all views legal to put on the table. Going super, super local with this, I visited my parents yesterday, and my stepfather told me, just matter-of-factly, hey, so it turns out that rent control only affects the city of Santa Cruz on that ballot measure. And I responded by saying, oh my God, you thought it affected the whole county? If you believed that, then what other lies are thrown your way? And he goes, well, yeah, I mean, that happens in every political campaign. And I love the dude. I love him. I've lived with him I've lived at home since I was 5 years old. But that sort of acceptance of grand scale lies being promoted on a slew of issues all the time in every political campaign is really, really a very casual way of indicting our entire electoral system. And that was on display. I saw recently Mr. Donald Trump, I got to mention him one more time, is that he's rallying for Ted Cruz right now, who's in a little bit of trouble. They asked him if he felt bad about implying that Ted Cruz's father helped kill JFK. And he smiled and said, no, because that worked out very nicely, meaning he won. So politics is a game to be played as if it's only cheating if you get caught. And if you win, then you can guide the referee in a different mission and just, everything goes on as it always has. Really gives me hope for the future as someone who plans on living for at least a few more years. I don't understand how this is the type of atmosphere that we can live in where lies are just accepted as the main dish in the course of our election system. 831-459-4036. If you have thoughts on that, if you have solutions, if you have a candidate or issue you want to mention in the last few minutes, you are welcome to do so. We got a text that says, great reporting. The normal corruption has been taking steroids for 2 years, and now we're literally facing the monsters of dictatorship. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Gary. I would also say that in the words of Atmosphere, a junkie don't bounce till he hits the ground, and I really feel like that's what it's taking for us, but I hope that we bounce and land on our feet, because dictatorships and tyranny usually start with a popular election. Adolf Hitler was elected. It was low turnout, low enthusiasm, and a chaotic environment, and I'm not going to read that, especially in the climate that we're in. Someone just wrote me some, I'm going to call that hate speech and not even describe it. I'm not even going to give it the level of saying why that's out of line at the moment. But that's cool. If you want to say things like what I just got texted and what the president's been saying at his rallies at the same time that there's very targeted massacres going on, you can get your own radio show. Pretty sure there's one somewhere in the area that'll help you out with that. But we got about 2 minutes left. I just want to say that I'm tired of the lies on Measure M. I'm tired of the lies on Prop 10. I'm tired of voter intimidation on the level of landlords saying they will do certain things or won't do certain things based on how their tenants vote. And I'm tired of landlords putting signs up in their tenants' front yards. That's not their decision. You're on KZSE Santa Cruz with Dan Wu on Unquestionable. Hello.
Yeah, I thought you had a fantastic show going on. It's very interesting. I was wondering, earlier you were talking about the people that are doing the rent control hadn't mentioned that it's only downtown or it's the Santa Cruz City. Is that, you have more information on that?
Wait, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
You were talking about the Measure 10 being about Santa Cruz City and not the county. I thought that was rather interesting.
Proposition 10 is a state measure. Measure M, the local rent control, only applies to the city, not the county, which is actually probably smart by the Measure M people, because almost everyone I know that's against Measure M very strongly lives in Aptos. So I think out in the more rural areas where they have more space around them, I think there's much more opposition to rent control than there is in the city. So, Measure M, the rent control, thank you for the question, does apply only to Santa Cruz City. Proposition 10, which allows future conversations on rent control to be more open, is a statewide proposition.
My main concern is, how do you suppose it's going to affect voting in Santa Cruz when there are so many new UCSC students that are going to be voting, and there's such an influx of housing in the downtown area? I think it will kind of increase the size of Santa Cruz and change the demographics. But
I would agree, and I think we need to be careful. I'm going to answer this with you off the air. I will say that, in my opinion, I would support very targeted, more dense 4- and 5-story buildings are already all over downtown. I would support that type of housing. I would support giving credits to either renters or homeowners. I don't care which one you are. If you can figure out a way to move to town without needing a parking space for a vehicle. I would support nonprofits like those operating in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, being put in contact with the Santa Cruz City Council, and the Santa Cruz City Council being open to passing regulations so we don't have to take this on ourselves as voters like we have had to with Measure M. And I would support them looking at low-cost, affordable housing, nonprofit organizations, and not just developers that want to build $3,000 a month one-bedroom apartments and advertise in areas where the median income is 3 times higher than Santa Cruz County. We're out of here. Thank you so much. This has been Unquestionable. You got Pixelation Station or Pixelation Destination coming up. I will let Dustin clarify that for both of us because I really like their show. So thank you so much. We'll be back next Monday for our last election show. I'm out of here. Dan Wu, stealing extra time. I'm so sorry. KZSC Santa Cruz, Unquestionable out.